So I have to admit, when NewAir reached out to us to do a collab and review about a wine fridge, I thought, how the heck am I supposed to put that into a woodworking channel? But we did it, and it's pretty awesome. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Jody. This is Inspire Woodcraft. Today, we're working on one of the bigger projects we've done in quite some time, at least content-wise, and I'm super excited to jump into this build. Now, I did tell NewAir that I would do a quick review on the wine fridge that they sent us, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about this fridge, and we're going to jump right into the build. Now, just as a reminder, links to some of our other videos and items we used in this video can be found in the description box down below. Here you'll also find links to other stuff like Patreon, where you can help support this channel so we can keep making awesome content, as well as where to find us on social media, our website, and our contact info. So according to the wine drinker on our house, wine is supposed to be stored between 45 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit, with 55 being optimal. And with the NewAir AWR190SB, you can easily just set it and forget about it. This unit is compact, efficient, and pretty to look at, and it really fits well in our kitchen space. Having a lock on the door is especially nice, as we do have a curious little one and a hard tile floor, which can be a recipe for disaster. The best part of all this is by clicking the link in the description box and using the code INSPIREWOODCRAFT at checkout, you can save yourself 20% on this unit, which is pretty awesome. Now let's start building stuff. Now I'm going to use 3/4 inch birch plywood for the general construction of this build, and since I haven't built a decent beam compass yet, I taped a pencil to the end of my straight edge rule, and that's how I got the radius. Cut that radius out with the jigsaw, and then finish it up on the belt sander, and then did a little hand sanding. This is going to be my main template for the entire project, so I really needed this thing to look sharp. Then I could move on to cutting the sides and the shelf stock. I used a piece of scrap wood to determine what the angle would be for the inner uprights, and then I would come back and trim each one to length individually just to make sure that I didn't screw anything up. Here you can see what that end result looks like. Next I came through and I scribed a line exactly where those uprights would be. I used that base piece there as a template to draw all this stuff out. Then I went ahead and transferred all my marks over it, sort of like a mirror image, to create one shelf. I also had to remember to take a 1/4 inch off of that because it's going to be a 1/4 inch recessed into some dados into the uprights, which I'll show you in a second. After a little sanding and shaping, I had the shelf exactly how I wanted it, so I used that one as a template to go ahead and trace out all the other shelf stock. Now after cutting and sanding all that shelf stock, it was time to lay out my dado marks for the uprights. Now it was very important on these to make sure that I was pulling from the correct direction. I'm not doing this backwards for no reason. I have to make sure that the beveled edges are on the correct sides, or else I'd be running my dado marks on the wrong side of the carcass. And here I'm using my new dado jig that I came up with to route a perfect plywood thickness dado into each one of the uprights to accept the shelves. This will make a lot more sense when we put this all together here in just a second. Now is a good time to go ahead and do the sanding on these, as I knew once it was assembled I wasn't going to be able to. Now I made an extra shelf, and what I did with that is I came in about a 1/2 inch around all sides and it kind of connected the dots, and I'd cut these little pieces out for 4 of the shelves. Now this is going to be cleats to hold the plywood backer that's going to hold our cork, which again you'll see here in just a second. After a good dry fit to make sure that everything was going to go together well, I went ahead and measured in a 1/2 inch, threw in a staple, measured a 1/2 inch on the other end, threw in a staple, and fastened the whole thing down. And I do these for all 4 shelves. Now I'd set those shelves aside and I'd go ahead and get to the back. The back is just a ripped 1/4 inch plywood that I just fastened to the back with staples. I went ahead and surface sanded the whole front to give me a nice surface to get the edge banding on. And then I went ahead and made my own edge banding, ripping strips of pine at about 3/32 of an inch. Now this might make some of you cringe, but being in a hurry, I decided to do an experiment and use thick CA glue and an accelerant to install my edge banding. Now it turned out this actually worked really well. Would I do it all the time? Maybe not, but for this job it actually turned out really good. So I went ahead and flush cut the ends and moved on to the horizontal areas. Now these can be a little tricky because they're on a curve, so you might need a little more length than what you would think. I found it easier to cut them a little long and sand them back rather than cut them short and then not have enough material later on. Because the CA glue cure time is so much less than regular wood glue, I was able to start sanding down the edges right away and flush all these up. Now I can put my 1/4" plywood backer, and here you see the cleats behind there that I was talking about. I'm just going to throw some staples in here, and this is just going to be the backer to set our corks on. Now guess who got to help on a project? I brought these inside and Caitlin volunteered to stain them for me so I could move on to cutting the cork in the top, which was a big help so we could get this project moving a little bit quicker. Now for the top, I'm actually using what Home Depot calls barn board. It's not actually, but it's close enough for this project. And I also originally started out wanting to throw some gray strips in there, and I decided not to halfway through the project. Now this comes as shiplap, and I didn't need the shiplap part, so I ripped all those off until I had just square boards. And then I would use this new tapering jig concept that I came up with. I'll do a build video on this really soon once I get a couple of little bugs worked out of it, but I think you guys will be pretty excited about this jig. This allowed me to do double tapers because I wanted more of a sunburst effect as opposed to just right angle tapers. So with this, I was able to actually cut one taper and make a mirrored taper on the other side. And if that doesn't make sense, I don't know how else to explain it. But I wanted the wood grain running from the zero end all the way up to the wide end. While I was at it, I went ahead and made a jig to cut my corks in half too. This simple little sled allowed me to just drop a cork in, slice it in half, drop a cork in, slice it in half, and it worked out really well. I could have assembled this outside, but I didn't want to take the chance of screwing up any of my layouts or measurements. I went ahead and installed it all around the unit to make sure that we had a nice, good fit. I brought the whole unit back outside, and now I could start rearranging my corks. I took all the corks and by hand sanded all the saw marks off the edges to get a nice clean fit. And to install them, I'd use a bead of thick CA glue and just a squirt of accelerator on the flat side of the cork, and that would allow for a nice quick bond. We were gonna use hot glue, and you could, but we've heard a lot of horror stories about hot glue and cork falling apart as time goes on. I used a small square cut piece of plywood to make sure that each row of these corks would stay in line. Now for the top, I really didn't want to use nails. I was just going to use glue and weight to fasten it down, but I decided it would just be easier and it kept me working. So I'd use glue and 15 gauge finish nails to actually lock all this down. And to get rid of where the points meet, I would start to hand sand. Now I did go through and use power sanders for this, but I figured I wouldn't bore you guys with the footage of that. Some more CA glue and some more cork. This was a last minute decision, but I actually cut these corks into thirds and used the outer third sections for labels facing out. This kind of acts as a bumper to hide the cut edge of the final top. And then I went through with another sanding block and I sanded down the bottom to make it all flush towards the bottom. Man, this was quite the project. Between the radiuses and the edge banding and the dados and the angles and figuring out how to get everything to jive and fit together and the detail at the bottom. So that detail at the bottom, we're actually going to farther down the road make a backsplash that's going to match that. So it's going to be the same height as the cork that's down there now, but it's going to be a backsplash around the corner. And what I'm thinking is it's going to go along one edge. It's going to have a radius in the back that matches the top, and then it's going to go into a backsplash along the other edge, and then in the center we're gonna have a centerpiece. We're also gonna do signage on the wall. I think on one side we're probably gonna say whiskey, and on one side we're gonna say wine. Kind of a his and hers. We're not really sure yet, but that's something we're gonna incorporate into there and actually finish that whole corner off. And I think it's gonna look pretty cool when all is said and done. So let me know what you guys thought about this video in the comments, as far as, did I go too fast? Did I not give enough information? I'm always curious to know what you guys are looking for when it comes to my videos, and what you guys are looking to learn or see or be entertained by. Either way, that wraps it up for now. Thanks again to NewAir for sending us out that wine fridge. Man, what a cool little unit that thing is. The wife is very happy about that. And again, don't forget to go check them out. The link is down in the description. And if you use that code INSPIREWoodcraft, you guys are gonna get 20% off, which I think is pretty generous of them. So check them out. Thanks for watching this video, as always, and we'll see you guys in the next video.